Hi, thanks for joining us for this episode of the In Focus Candidate Forum, being made possible by Whitewater Community Television, the Wayne County Area Chamber of Commerce, and Hometown Media Group. I'm Eric Marsh, Executive Director of Whitewater Community Television. Glad you're able to join us for what hopefully will be an interesting conversation with candidates running for Common Council in Districts 2 and 3. Some housekeeping things before I start the introductions. You will find these folks' name on your ballot, but only if you're actually registered to vote, and your days to do that are dwindling down. So you should get yourself registered to vote. October 7th is the deadline. You can do that by going to indianavoters.com. You can register to vote. You can check your status. You can find out where the voting locations are. If you don't know, you can do that at 301 East Main Street, Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30, or again, from home, indianavoters.com would be the place that you would want to go to be able to do that. And you want to get it done because voting starts right away. Early voting, early absentee voting actually starts on October 8th. You can do that at the voter registration office, again, 301 East Main Street, Monday, 8:30 to 5, Tuesday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30. The last days, you see that there, and we'll remind you of those things as we go. But first, you have to be registered. So do the first slide and then do the second slide, okay? Last thing I want to remind you is Real ID. You have, we mentioned it last week. If you are ready to get your driver's license checked or updated or do a lot of traveling, you want to get your ID checked or updated, because as of October 1st, 2020, the only way you'll be able to get on a plane is if you have a Real ID, and you will know it because it has a star in it. There are pages of information that you can find online. You can go to realid.in.gov to learn a lot more. But if you do travel and you don't have an updated ID with a star on it by the time you get to October 1, 2020, you are not getting on the plane. Okay? Just a couple of things to remind you. Now, let's have some fun. Let's start by introducing our co-host for this evening. I didn't mention phones off before we started, did I? Ray Huntco is sitting in with me this week, representing our partners, the Wayne County Area Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for being here.
I'm delighted to be here.
We have candidates running for Common Council Districts 2 and 3, Ardeen Scheffler, Kelly Cruz Nicholson, Samantha Bryant, and Bill Engel. Thank you all very much for being here. We're going to give you each a minute to 90 seconds to kind of introduce yourself to the general public. For those who may not know you, everybody knows you. And then we'll start with the conversations. Ardeen, we'll start with you.
Well, hi. Thanks very much for the opportunity to talk today. I'm Ardeen Scheffler, and I am a small business person, and I live on the north side of Richmond in the Star Historic District. I am very passionate about my neighborhood, and I'm very passionate about the city. And I just feel that I hear a lot of people tell me a lot of things, and I feel that there are a lot of people who feel left out of the loop, are not as trusting as government as they should be. Government is supposed to be a democracy where you can reach out and you have representatives that listen to you and try to answer your questions. And although Common Council is primarily a fiscal and legislative body, we still are representing our districts. And for a long time, I have felt like the Star District and the North End has been rather neglected. I've said for a while I didn't feel like we have representation, and that the district is split. But I really feel like as a small business person, I can bring a lot to the job. I have compassion for a lot of people. I'm on the streets with the people. I hear a lot. And I've already become a trusted source in my own neighborhood. So thought it was a great opportunity to step out and get out of my comfort zone. I hope people will look at my record and I mean, I don't have an election record, but who I am and what I've stood for in the past and what I represent. Nobody thinks.
Okay. Kelly.
Hi, I am Kelly Cruz Nicholson, and I am your District 2 council person. I have actually been in this position for 11 years. I am running for my 4th term. I think that city council and government is it is a way that I express myself to people that I don't reach every day. I work in the city. I'm a community liaison, and I go in and out of homes, and I work with at-risk families. I listen to issues every day that these families have. And I like to think that I've represented my district fairly well, and I hope I can continue to.
Samantha.
I'm Samantha Bryant, and I'm from District 3. I have been a resident of Richmond since I was born. I've actually lived in District 3 since I was born, and I think I've lived in District 3 for my entire life except for probably 10 years. I'm very passionate about Richmond and Wayne County as a whole. I'm on the executive committee for the Community Food Pantry. I'm the vice president of the Linden Hill Neighborhood Association, and I'm also on the Neighborhood Services Clearinghouse Board of Directors in Richmond. I'm very passionate about our city's future. I have a 16-year-old daughter, and I really want to help improve Richmond and make it someplace that my child and everyone's child wants to stay in as an adult or come back to after they go to school.
Okay, thank you. Bill.
My name is Bill Engel, and I'm running for the District 3 seat on the Richmond Common Council. I've lived in Richmond for 31 years. I've worked here, raised a family, and upon retirement, I wanted to stay involved in the community. I accepted Mayor Snow's appointment to his transition team and also to the Park Board. The Park Board has since appointed me to the Plan Commission, and I also serve on the Plat Committee of the Plan Commission. So my goal is to stay involved in this community. I think good things are on the horizon for the city of Richmond. I want to be a part of the discussion going forward. I think I've accomplished some things so far in my involvement, but I want to do more. And would like to be part of the discussion and part of the solutions that we face moving forward.
Thank you all very much. We'd like you to be part of this conversation, so if you have a question for the candidates, feel free. You can send us that question, Facebook or Twitter at WCTV Info, or you can give us a call, 765-973-8587. We'll take your questions and we'll put your questions in even before mine. So it's more important that we hear what you think and what you want to have answered as opposed to what I want to have answered. We're going to give the first couple of questions to Ray to kind of start things off.
First of all, let me say thank you all for running for public office. I think that the community deserves your respect and appreciation for undertaking candidacy, and of course to those who are successful and serve in office, their gratitude for your commitment to our community. So first of all, thank you all for being here and for being willing to stand for public office. I appreciate that. One of the things that I think has happened recently in both of your districts is, or adjacent to both of your districts that are being discussed today, is the abandonment of the area by a local grocery store. And some people have described this area of town as being a food desert. And I wanted to give you all a chance to talk a little bit about how important that is to the residents in the districts that you would like to represent, and what role you see for yourselves or City Council in addressing that concern.
Start with Bill, work this way.
Great. Thank you for that question, Ray. I appreciate it. I think that's a very important thing for our community. I think you're referring to the grocery on 13th and South E. I think it's devastating to that neighborhood and the citizens there, and I think I'm not exactly sure how we as a council can help to try to bring someone back to that area, but it has to be part of our discussion going forward. We have to support local businesses, and we have to be involved in that conversation, make sure that that conversation happens in the future, because so many of the people, we can't assume that everybody drives and everybody goes to Walmart or everybody goes to Kroger. We have to assume that people in the neighborhoods will walk to and from their store, and we have to provide them that opportunity. I don't know if there might be tax abatements available for to bring someone in there, but I do think that we need to consider that. We need to consider and strengthen all our neighborhoods. We can't just look at 2 or 3 or 4 of our neighborhoods. We have to be cognizant of everything and all the citizens in our community. If I get the opportunity, I would certainly be happy to be a part of that discussion going forward.
Samantha?
As I mentioned, I am on the board of directors for the Community Food Pantry, and food deserts is what we talk about constantly, how there's just not enough for the local residents, food-wise, fresh food. I am glad that some of the parks are starting to do the fresh fruit, where they're growing their own fresh fruit and the residents can go in. That's fabulous. I agree with Bill on when Needlers left, it was detrimental to the neighborhood. Those people have a hard time getting out to Walmart or Kroger or to the west side, and we do have to make it a priority to make sure that everyone in Richmond has the ability to get food. And I just totally blanked, sorry. And that's one of my core beliefs, is that we have to start taking care of our own.
Well, this is actually a big one for me. I wear two hats when it comes to talking about food in our area. I work as a community liaison, as I said, with families who are impoverished, and so I'm out there every day talking to families. It actually, I think it started long before Needlers left on 13th Street. We had Low Bills, which was actually down on Chester Boulevard, and then there was a milk house that was available. Both of those things were then taken away from that area. Then you had Needlers that left the area also, and it was also a Low Bill. So when you look at the people who are in that area, they actually have to travel to Meijer, to Walmart, to Needlers on the west side. The best thing they did was they brought in a Dollar Tree, which of course then is on the north side, but it still doesn't provide all of the essentials that everybody needs, the fresh fruit and things like that. So I work with the community food banks, and I find it difficult sometimes for families to get all that they need, even at the community food banks, because the community food banks actually they are still limited as to what the families can get, and it's difficult. And a lot of times the families don't understand or don't know what to do with the food that they do get from the community food banks. It doesn't mean they're not grateful. It doesn't mean that the food banks aren't doing a good job, but it's actually difficult to put together a meal when you have beans and rice and things, and they have these items and they don't know what to do with them. One of the things that I've done in the community is I started working with the Dwyer Center. My coworker and I got together and we teach what is called cooking on a budget. And what we do is we have partnered with a couple of the food pantries here in Richmond, and then what we do, Dust DeVito, she's amazing at the Wayne Township trustee's office, she comes in and she teaches them how to make amazing dishes out of just like a hodgepodge of food, things that I would have never dreamed of that we could do. And then she teaches those classes, and it gives those people the opportunity to say, you know what, it's not just a hodgepodge of food. I can make meals that are going to last for my family. And I think that that's what it's important. We do have a food desert, and it's sad. But one of the things that we need to look at is linking people with the resources to be able to get food. A lot of people, don't. There's certain food banks that are only open on certain days. And so, just giving people the connections that they need to be able to get there. I have a solution, but we'll talk about it later.
Well, as a landlord, when I first moved over to North 11th Street, I didn't move there to become a landlord, but we started a community garden. I was hoping that the lot across the street, I could make that, but it was not available. So we started a community garden in the back of 404-406 North 11th, and Bud Kirkendall was my tenant at the time. He had a garden where the original New Boswell was located over there by the bridge, by Charlie's Coffee Bar, and it became a gravel parking lot. That was always his garden. I didn't know it was his, and I admired it, and when they made that a parking lot, he put a community garden in the back. And we had to set down some guidelines because we had people taking from it. The idea was that they had to ask. It was given for free, but they could not take it and sell it. Since I've been there, I've planted about 10 fruit trees. We have two peaches that we got peaches on this year. I've got 3 apples in 1 yard. My plum tree died. I'm really sad. I planted some cherries and some plums in other yards. I have some Hispanic tenants that said, hey, this tree needs to be cut, and they know how to prune them, so they've pruned them for me, and I'm really excited about that. And then when Bethany Norwalt started the Sprout of Control, the grassroots thing, I was really excited about that, and she was looking for a truck, and I didn't know Bethany from a hole in the ground, and I said, hey, I have a truck. So we went out to the Whitewater greenhouse that's out there that the Parks Department has now, and we went out to, not there, we went to the state greenhouse out in the state hospital grounds. They were using that greenhouse at that time, and I helped remove a bunch of plants. And several of my tenants, which are lower income, received plants from that program, and I allowed them to plant them in the backyard and use them. But definitely there's a food desert. I get grocery carts as a landlord, and although I try to discourage that, that's what they need, and we were very grateful for Dollar General, even myself, to do a quick run for ham for a sandwich or something like that is really, really helpful. It's too bad that anyone would have to go 3 miles to get their hands on something.
Okay.
Thank you so much for those thoughtful responses. Another item that may be of interest to residents throughout the city, but maybe more particularly an opportunity for you to comment, is the Old Reed Hospital site may be an opportunity for us to do something that has an important impact for the future of our city. And I wonder if any of you have given thought to that, to what might be done there, and how City Council might be involved in bringing that about. So what are your hopes and fears for that site?
Samantha? You get to go first this time?
Yay.
The first thing we have to do is make sure it's not contaminated, because I have heard that there might still be some contamination on the property, so I would definitely want to make sure that it's a safe place for people to build, whether it be housing or anything of the like. We have to first make sure that our residents are safe. The next thing I would say is I would love to see maybe a housing program out there. I know that there's not enough safe, livable housing in Richmond, and I would like to see a project like that. We were just in Fort Wayne, and when they redid their downtown, they built some beautiful apartment buildings, and I would love to see something like that here on that property.
And I, speaking of livable, affordable housing and appropriate housing, that's something that's really passionate to me. And I do feel like that on the soil is being tested, it's been tested, things like that. So I would like to see, I would like to see housing that, and this is something that's kind of been a dream of mine, which is sort of a transitional living housing for families. We have a lot of families in this city that are, they're not considered homeless because they're sleeping on couches, things like that. But you know, I've had to work with many families that I've had to separate, you know, kids from mom from, you know, from the dad, things like that, so that they would all have like a comfortable place to sleep. One thing that I had actually worked on and made a presentation about this was looking at transitional housing, and the transitional housing would actually be affordable housing for families. The families then would, while they're living there, they would be required to attend some life skills classes, look for employment, things like that, that would help them then get on their feet. And as they get on their feet and gain employment, then they would have a sliding scale of rent that they would pay. I think that that's something that would really benefit our community, because I don't think that people know how prevalent the homeless population is in Richmond. the children that are going to school every day that have had to sleep at friend's house, aunt and uncle's house, something because they've had to be separated from their family because they can't all be together in one place. That's actually, if you ask what I would like to see done, that's always been a dream of mine. So yeah, somewhere in the city, not just at the old hospital site.
Yeah, unfortunately, we do have a lack of affordable housing for some of our lower wage workers. When these people get hired on at a shop at making only $9 an hour, and they're supposed to try to support their families, it's hard. My rents are within a ballpark for some, they would qualify for lower income, even though I'm a private entity, and I would never put someone in something that I wouldn't live in myself. They're not brand new. Some of them have 70s kitchens, but as long as they're still functional, they still function and they're clean. So I feel like I've helped with that situation, and I had been nicknamed before by Pastor Fonzer, who has since moved away, Mama of the Block, because a lot of people come to me for other things. My degree is in finance, and Kelly and I actually at one time, when we were on the board of the UEA, we were going to put together some workshops to try to train people and educate people on their jobs and on paying their bills and how to take care of their home and that type of thing and what rights they had. And we've been to tenant meetings at the Dwyer Center before. I went as a landlord and was able to give information to the tenants on things that I know as an advocate. I've also offered with some of the substandard housing and some of our infamous landlords that we have some people come and tell me some horrible stories. And if they're being evicted and that landlord has paid that fee already, I've offered to go with them and represent them or advise them, not as a lawyer, but as a friend in a countersuit. So I have offered that to about 3 people. They've not taken up on it. I don't know if they thought they might get ramifications, but as a landlord, I'm not giving legal advice, but I'm letting them know, hey, what they're doing to you is wrong. So, it is their home. Whether you're a landlord, whether it's a rental, it should be safe. Even the poorest of the poor require and desire a safe and clean place to live.
Thank you. I think that the development of that property is very important to our community. It's in the heart of the community. It's it could form a nice connection with the Depot District, with the downtown, with access to our east side, hopefully with access to the west side and some development on the west side. But I agree that some form of housing would be great there, but I would also like to see some type of retail, even if it's a strip mall or a grocery store would be great. But I know there's issues with the floodplain back there. I am a member of the Society for Preservation and Use of Resources, and we've been trying to work with the government, with the Parks Department particularly, to try to build a trail from Freeman Park north to the IU East and IB Tech and Reed campuses. Those things happen over time, and it takes a lot of time. But I applaud the mayor and Wayne County government and Reed for making this happen, for bringing down the old Reed and preparing this land for development. And I think it's one of the key issues that council needs to be aware of moving forward. We need to develop that. I also think we need to work on the former Elder Bierman property and see if there's a solution there. Those things don't happen easily, but we need to build partnerships and have those important discussions going forward. And I hope to be a part of that.
I would like to add, if I might.
Go.
We just went to the Regional Neighborhood Networking Conference in Fort Wayne just a few weeks ago. And there was actually a program there, I think it was called Joshua's Place, and they have affordable housing. They have a grocery they're building. They have like a satellite campus for one of the local schools. They have coffee shops. Everything is right there, and I think that would be a huge asset in Richmond. It would help people who are trying to go back to school who can't get all the way up to the IU East campus on a consistent basis. If they take online classes, for instance, their food would be right there. If it was the low income housing, I know at Joshua's Place, they offer the classes like Kelly mentioned, and their goal is everyone that leaves is their credit score is 700 or above. And so just part of living there is taking those classes and getting people back on their feet, because that's a huge problem. Is once you're down, it's very hard to get back up without some sort of help. So that's a project I would love to see here.
Just a quick follow-up. You all have mentioned a couple of different things, retail, maybe some transitional housing. How important is it to you that that particular space ends up on the tax rolls? Ready?
I think that it's quite a desirable piece of land. It's very noticeable, very visible. My minor is in economics. My major is business and international business with finance. And so I'm always thinking, I was a math teacher. You know, math teachers are kind of awkward personally, but we're always figuring and we're always computing and we're always analytical in our minds. So I have an excuse to be a little awkward, right? Anyway, it's a very desirable piece of property. It's very visible, whether you're traveling north or south on 27. It's a very large piece of property, rather close to our center city area.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to see that become something private. I really, really would. It's on a main thoroughfare. It would be attractive to someone, provided that it's not a brownfield and that it's cleaned up. I also was on the one of the bike path things that Matt Stiegel had held, you know, and the city held there, actually, in his facility. And we did talk about that, the paths that connect the college campuses to the downtown and it going through there. It would be really wonderful to see something private instead of, there are other areas for public housing that would be not-for-profit.
Kelly, how important is it?
We have, I'm probably going to have the unpopular opinion, Eric. I got to tell you, I do think it's important, because I mean, we have a lot of non-for-profit in Richmond, and I think that that is to me, that is something that would be important. Is if we could do something that would be able to get the property back onto the tax rolls, then yeah.
How important?
It's incredibly important. I just heard from someone today that the Leland is facing double their tax bill this year because of the nonprofit statuses. It's affecting everyone's taxes. And so to keep Richmond livable as one of the most cost-effective cities to live in, I think it's very important that we keep it on the tax rolls.
Now, if I'm not wrong, I believe one of the covenants that was put on this property when the city and EDC and Wayne County acquired it is that the next owner will pay taxes on it, whether it's Reed Hospital or Earlham or anybody else, a private developer. So we have to do that. I mean, as we've seen Reed Hospital expand and buy up properties, particularly in Spring Grove and in the city of Richmond, you know, we pay more in property taxes when that happens. So we have to make sure that the end result is going to be someone that will pay property tax on it. Have to.
Yes.
You're watching the In Focus Candidate Forum on Whitewater Community Television's WCTV Channel 11. We're speaking with candidates running for Richmond Common Council District 2 and 3, Ardeen Scheffler, Kelly Cruz-Nicholson, Samantha Bryant, Bill Engel. Question, as a council member, you're responsible for passing the city budget. Each year you will have discussions with department heads about what they need, how much their budget should be, that type of thing. Besides those conversations, talk about how you'll take the approach, what approach you'll take to learning what each one of the city departments do, how they operate, so that when it comes to talking about their budgets, you're not just talking about numbers on the page, but you're talking about the services that they provide and how those can be effectively and efficiently provided to citizens of Richmond. Kelly, start with you on this one.
Okay. So since we are currently in the budget process, one thing that I can say is when I came on city council, it was my goal to get to know every department and know what they do, because you're not always aware of what everybody is doing. And you look at the numbers sometimes and it's just like, okay, well, this is obligated. What is that obligated for? What does it mean? Can you tell me that? This is unobligated. What is that for? What does it mean? And so you do need to be familiar with each department within the city, so that when you do look at their budget, it's not just a bunch of numbers. Because honestly, if I have to be honest about it, the first year that I had to do a budget, I mean, I had to sleep for 3 days after the first, the first budget book I got. I was just like, what is happening? So I think that you have to have a fair knowledge of what each department is doing, what each department is spending. Is it necessary? And unfortunately, that's the toughest part, is because just because, let's say, the street department deems this as as something necessary that they need, is it necessary right now for the city? Can it wait 2 years? So those are the type of decisions that you have to make. So I think it's extremely important to get to know all of the departments, know what they're doing, know what they're about, ask questions. That is the big thing, ask questions. It's not as important to sit in front of everybody and say, oh, well, A, B, C, and D, but check it out. You know what I'm saying? Ask those questions, because you're going to need to know, and your constituents deserve to know that you know what you're talking about. So, yeah.
What's your approach to learning about the departments, the people that are in it, what they do, and how they serve the citizens?
Almost every job that I've ever had, and even as a student, I've had the opportunity to shadow people and shadow professionals. There's a great learning opportunity in shadowing professionals, and I've always been an advocate for apprenticeship. So it makes sense to spend the day in a department and see what they do. It made sense to me to go to the Citizens Police Academy and learn about what all the departments do, and I've done that, and my brother and my sister-in-law are doing that now, so it's fun to watch and recoup. But yeah, I job shadowed someone at Chase Bank. My grandmother made me her chauffeur and driver, and that was quite the learning experience, because I got to go in on all the meetings and how she dealt with clients, and there's no better way to learn. And you can critique and know what's wasteful and what's not. You can watch. There are a lot of things that we think we need that we don't always need when it comes down to necessities.
Yeah.
I have had the opportunity to cover the city and county as a journalist, and so I've been to more Plan Commission meetings than I ever want to admit to, along with Sanitation Board and Park Board, and it was a learning experience. I went to a Plan Commission one night, and it was a snowy night, cold night, and the attorney said, "You must have picked the short straw," and I said, you know what? I'm happy to be here. I find it interesting. Yeah. I find what they do in sanitation very interesting. I've ridden on a trash truck. I drove the big truck out at the landfill that crushes the trash before they cover it. Certainly, this is my 4th year on the park board, and that's been a learning experience. I think it's terribly important that we understand what people do. City government is just not numbers on the page. It's people providing services. We need to make sure that we understand what they're doing and the issues they face. We need to support them. I do support giving those folks raises. I think they work hard for us. And when I call 911 and the fire department's there in 3 minutes, that's a good thing. So I will continue to learn, and hopefully, and I support our employees. We have some great employees that I will continue to support them if elected.
Samantha.
I had the pleasure of going to the greenhouse recently, and I got a tour from one of their employees, and just seeing what they were able to accomplish with what they have and how proud of it they were was eye-opening for me. And I would love to be able to do that with every department in the city. And I think that would be a great first step in seeing exactly how those budget dollars are used and making sure we're focusing on needs over wants and making sure that the top priorities are being handled quickly, and if something can wait, then it needs to wait.
You're watching the In Focus Candidate Forum on Whitewater Community Television's WCTV Channel 11. We have had a chat question come in from Twitter, I believe, so we'll bring that one up, and we're going to pick up the pace. We're going to ask that you keep your answers closer to the 90-second mark for the most part through here, okay? So let's get this question in. Does Richmond have, or should Richmond have, stricter rules for landlords? Do we even have guidelines for landlords here in our city so landlords are not able to charge such high rent and not have property insurance on their properties? Interestingly enough, this is actually your start point. So just kind of rolls that way.
You know, I've been on both sides of this, and like I said, I've had tenants come to me. And to be right up front, I was involved in my own controversial issue earlier this year when I had a house burn. And it was one that I had acquired later and forgot, even as an insurance professional, to put it on my policy. So I had an uninsured property. Normally I have them insured. So I had to make the horrible, horrible decision, and it was a deeply wounding learning experience for me because it had to come down. My heart didn't want it to, but my logical mind said it had to at that point. There are some horrible landlords in the area, and I still think that, I mean, it's a tough job. It's a really tough job. I've done 7 evictions. I do all my evictions legally. I have thousands and thousands of dollars of unpaid rent for only this year. And I have another one that I still have to work on. So it is a very, very tough job. People are getting settlements from their school money, and they're buying a car rather than paying their rent. So there's priorities messed up. There's a lot of learning that needs to be done. But there are some bad landlords too. But for me personally, I think that it's a shame that every time we come up with something difficult, the person who's doing the right thing has to be, for lack of a better word, punished or lose some rights. I don't need more hoops to jump through. I don't need more expenses. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I made a mistake, but even then they saw that I had made a lot of investment in those properties. I wasn't just letting them sit, and when you see what people live in, they're not living in some of the horrible conditions like I'm sure Kelly has seen, as we've talked about in the past. So I think we can educate the people on what their rights are, and we can go after them. I think there are some venues to do that, and I think peer pressure is a big thing, and other good landlords need to speak up and put the pressure on.
You've heard about this before.
Yeah, I think the question was, do we have stricter rules for landlords? And I'm not sure that that's the case. Should we have? I think there are a lot of very good landlords who take care of their property and are responsible to their tenants and to the city. There are some problem folks that I think people like sanitation and now our new code enforcement office have to deal with all the time. I think the rules are the rules, and they need to be enforced. I think there are times when they're not. I think we've had that discussion before about why is a property allowed to sit the way it is, and I think we need to be responsive to that. I'm hoping that this code enforcement office, with its, I think, 9 full-time people, maybe 8 and a part-timer, will be responsible for that. I know Kelly at one time was talked to the landlords about some changes and some rules, and I think that was a real struggle.
We're not going to talk about that.
Maybe let you talk about that. But I think we need to enforce the rules that are in place. I don't know if they need to be stricter if we are not accomplishing our goal of making safe, affordable houses in safe, affordable neighborhoods, then we need to have stricter laws. But I'd have to look at that at the time if I'm elected.
Samantha.
I would love to see a landlord registry in place in Richmond. So the city knows exactly who the landlords are, all of their contact information. I personally, just within our neighborhood, know who the landlord is that owns all the houses on my street. And I have made personal contact with a landlord, discussed the issues that were going on at her property. Due to our discussion, she came in, she made some very substantial changes to the property, and things have changed for the better. And so I think making it a point that we have good open communication with the landlords in Richmond is a top priority, and I think just starting with that could hopefully increase their response to the code enforcement. If they get a violation, they know we're willing to work with them. You don't have to fix it immediately, but you have to definitely make strides and show us that you're willing to fix the problem, and we're willing to work with you on that.
My turn.
Don't go off. don't go off.
I won't. Actually, and I'm going to stick to my 90 seconds, Eric. You've asked me to. Landlords, properties, tenants has been my passion for a very, very, very long time. Bill talked about the fact that I had tried to work with landlords before to get some things in place. We have penalties for landlords that are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Do I think that those penalties are enough? No, I don't. I think that for someone who has 25 properties in Richmond and you get slapped with a $100 fine, guess what? You're going to pay that fine, you're going to keep it moving. And it's not going to be something that's going to impact you. But if you have $25 or 25 properties in Richmond and you get hit with a $1,500 fine, that's going to make a little more impact. I think that we have people who are amazing landlords. I mean, I deal with landlords on an everyday basis. And then we have those people that are horrible landlords, and they're actually the ones that we hear about all the time because they're the ones that aren't keeping their properties up to code. They're charging outrageous amounts for rent for families that are already impoverished. You know, there's so many things that we could change. And I think that, but I would be the first one to say that I believe that stricter penalties for landlords would help. I mean, I certainly wouldn't want to get hit with a $500 fine every time, my grass was too high. You know what I'm saying? But you have those people who, they don't care enough, actually, about their problem. They're just concerned with how much money they're getting in. I have four apartments in one building. Each of those apartments is $600. But your building looks like it's falling down. But it doesn't matter because guess what? You're getting $2,400 a month. So to me, that's an issue.
Next question comes from Ray.
All right, this is a little bit of a technical question. I'm hoping that all of you have had a chance to think about this issue, but I'll throw it out there. There's something called Richmond Opportunity Zones, and these overlap both District 2 and District 3 significantly, both the so-called 200 census area and the 900 census area. 200, of course, is in the Central Business District area and a little further to the east, and then the 900 district is a little further to the south. What are your thoughts about how these opportunity zones and the investment through tax credits or tax deferral that could be made in those zones, how do you see that as either being a benefit or are there concerns about these opportunity zones? So if you've had a chance to think about that, I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
Bill.
I have been to the council meeting where they made the presentation on the opportunity zones, and I obviously am in favor of the opportunity for investment in our districts. But I think it will require additional study. I don't think we're there yet, but I know the mayor and his staff are working on that, and would have to bring that back to council as it develops. But at this point, I guess I'm supportive as far as I understand it.
I support the opportunity zones, but I can see a few problems happening. I could see people using it as a tax shield for those years and then pay your taxes later. I would like to see more involvement with local owners of buildings investing and using the opportunity zones to the best way to improve the buildings for the current owners. I don't really want somebody from out of town coming in and buying up large swaths of downtown because it's an opportunity zone.
And I would have to agree with that. I do agree with the opportunity zones, and I do think that they could be a good investment in our city. The issue that I do have with it is those folks that come from out of town, they put that investment in there, but they're not really invested in our community. And I think that that is my big thing with the opportunity zone. I would like to see more local folks that are given that opportunity to invest and invest in our community. I think that that is the one thing that I look at when it comes to the opportunity zones. Plus, it's in my district, so I would love to see more people, invest in my district. So,
Yeah, they hit on two key things. I've often said, and kind of tongue-in-cheek, there is no savior that's going to come in and save Richmond for us. I am a strong advocate for being an entrepreneur and local investment, and I believe there's a lot of people out there that are very creative and innovative who could do a lot more than what they're doing. Outside investors don't care about our community. 9 North was a beautiful project. The Atlas building was a beautiful project. They got their low-income housing tax grants and credits, and now they're both managed by a not-so-wonderful property management firm out of Indianapolis. And they've both really, the clientele is not what it used to be. It was, would you agree? Oh, never mind. She
sorry.
lives in my neighborhood, so.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
But anyway,
Arlene.
the Atlas building, the clientele there is not what it used to be, and it was supposed to be seniors. And there are a lot of calls there for poor behavior. I don't know that they're doing the screening that they should have, or the maintenance that they're supposed to be doing. So these out-of-town people, they build, they get their credits, they leave. We want people who are invested in the community to make the community better. And tax credits are a nice way to go. Absolutely, but maybe not-for-profits can come in and do that. I'd love to see what, we do a lot if we can pull together as individuals, I think.
If I can add on that also, I think it's great to have local investment and local investors who will, we hope, follow through on projects. But I don't think you close the door on outside investments. I think this program has some rules built into it that people have to be responsible with their investment and their development of projects. And we need to make sure that we are not just saying, well, we want a local person to develop this thing, because then I think you shut the door on the whole idea of opportunity zones. Sorry, Kelly.
Actually, what I was going to say was, that's one of the issues that I do have, is when she brought up, the fact that there's people who come in and they do these quick investments, get their tax credits, and then they go, and then we're kind of left with their mess, so to speak. And I think that that is one of the downsides of it.
Yeah, but I do agree. We shouldn't close the door at all, because we had met with the Historic Preservation Commission. We went to Wabash and saw a lot of the things that were happening there, and we were really impressed with how they had done their downtown. They were also named as a stellar community, and they have a committee that worked really well together. The mayor and their Center City, their Main Street department, and their tourism and everything, all located downtown. Anyway, They did have some outside investment, but they also had a lot of local investment. But I think they did a better job of really vetting who was coming in. So.
Do you want to jump in? You're watching the In Focus Candidate Forum on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV, Channel 11. I'm talking to Ryan on air again, shouldn't do that. Ryan, do you have the district maps for Districts 2 and 3? Can you put those up, please? We're talking specifically about District 2 and 3, so we want to be able to show those two areas and where they are. We're going to go in a little bit closer on those. So right in the middle, running kind of north and south there is District 2.
Correct.
And then to the right of that in the yellow is more of where District 3 falls in as far as where the city goes. So those are the areas that we're talking about in particular that these folks want to represent. Most of the votes that you are going to take as council people really are going to affect everybody in the city. But you are running to represent a district. So take a minute. Talk about your individual district a little bit, its uniqueness, and if there is something that you think you need to consider bringing to council that would help your particular area. Smith, we start with you.
District 3 for me is just so diverse. We've got the Star School area, we've got Millionaire Mile, which the Richmond Neighborhood Restoration Group is redoing the houses in that, and they're beautiful. I actually live in a house that some of the people that work for Richmond Neighborhood Restoration Group had done on the side, and it's gorgeous. I think our center city location is amazing. We're close to the parks, we're close to downtown. It probably doesn't take us more than 5 minutes to get to anywhere in Richmond, which is great. We have several schools in our district that for a lot of people are within walking distance, which is huge for people with children. If there was anything I would like to see changed, I would probably like to see the needle exchange moved. I think it's a program that we haven't necessarily gotten all the statistics back on. And I don't like that it's in a neighborhood where kids are coming out to play and they are exposed to needles just laying on the ground. I see it all the time on Speak Out Richmond. People find needles while their kids are outside playing, and that's a huge concern for me as a mom, just representing what is best for the families of my district is what I'm incredibly passionate about.
We're going to go out of order. Since we started with 3, we're going to go to Bill.
Okay. Obviously, Samantha's correct. It's a very diverse district, District 3, the Star School area through Reeveston and on to Meadow Park, and then all the way to South L, which would include the Geyer Apartments and used to be Country Club Apartments. Genesis, that's right. So, as a representative of that district, I represent the citizens, and I need to know what is important to them. Without having done any exhaustive research on that, I think that the opioid crisis and crime in our neighborhoods is very, very important. I think we need to continue to work on that. We as Democrats hope to make that one of our more important issues going into the future. Safe, affordable housing and neighborhoods that are safe are also important. So we need to make sure that the code enforcement department does its job and has the tools to do its job. We need to make sure that our police and our fire and our EMS also have the tools to do their job and be responsible to our neighborhood. And also jobs. Jobs are always going to be important. We need to continue to do the work that has begun, the partnerships with the City of Richmond, the Wayne County government, the Economic Development Corporation of Wayne County and the Wayne County Chamber of Commerce, and also with the state. We need to continue to do that. It is a community effort, and we as council who don't directly work on that project still need to be involved. We need to be ambassadors of our city.
Ardeen, District 2. And what,
Yeah.
describe the district, its uniqueness, and if there's something that you think as a potential council person you need to bring to the table, particularly for your district.
My district too is very diverse. It is the older because it's center city. It extends all the way up to Spring Grove, through the north end of Richmond, the Depot District, the downtown, a little bit of Vale, Old Richmond, and then all the way down to South Q. And in traversing some of those areas, there's a lot of diversity. There's a lot of people that I've run into. But what can I bring? People need a voice, and what I feel like as a business district, and I said before as a landlord, it doesn't matter how poor you are, people deserve and all desire to live in a clean and safe environment. I'm at a loss for words here too myself. But I do think affordable housing is important. Safety is important. I think that they need to feel empowered, though. A lot of people feel like they can't make a difference. A lot of people feel like they don't have a voice. A lot of people think, why vote? Because people are going to do what they want anyway. And I think we need to reach out to them. And I think we need to let them know that, no, we are here for your concerns. We are here for the long term. We do want appropriate, the police department is up to full force now. We do want appropriate policing. They're doing very effectively right now with their data-led policing, intelligent-led policing, and their data. They're making a lot more arrests. They know where more of that traffic is moving. The code enforcement department just came out yesterday. I have a wedding. The house next door to the chapel just went vacant. We've had people coming in and out of there. They came out and they boarded that up for me. I'm glad to see that code enforcement is there because it has always been on the books. We heard that too, with landlords. She said, there are some things on the books that hopefully will be enforced, and hopefully we can bring that to light. I think a lot of it's education, but you can't tell somebody this is what you need to do. It's like, come on, what is it we can do together? I think I've already proven that can be done in my little area. I'm not lording over anybody, but we have a good community that works and cooperates with one another.
Kelly.
Well, gosh, if I have to talk about what's amazing in our district is, my gosh, if you're looking at just the Depot area, the shopping, the walking, the festivals, the community, it's all right there, which is great. But if you go to the north, then, we have a section of people that feel like they've been left behind because as you go over the train tracks, there's nothing until you hit the top of Chester Boulevard, and people, it bothers people. As great as my district is, we also have the most blighted properties in the city. That's something that needs to be addressed, something that we need to look at. As we move farther south, again, still awesome. You have the Excel School, which is you can get your Core 40 diploma, and this is amazing for adults and young people who have dropped out of school, and they'll still be able to get their diploma. You're working at the Y is in that area. You still have people who serve. They look out for each other, which is something that I've learned over the years, is just getting out and talking to people. They look out. They know who's in their neighborhood. They know what to watch for. And I think that just knowing that we have a great sense of community is pretty amazing. How would I change things in my district? Sidewalks in the far south end of town, around South Q, South P Street. There are some sidewalks that need to be taken care of. I'm a big fan of the senior center, so they have a good program out there. I think for me, looking at what is north of the railroad tracks, how are we going to make those people feel uplifted? They feel like that they've lost so much, and that is a struggle that I think that we will have to look at in District 2.
One of the things that has occupied our airwaves a little bit in recent years is the Complete Streets project that incorporates safe travel paths for pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists on East Main Street, 10th Street, North E, Fort Wayne Avenue, and 7th Street as planned. And we're about halfway through, a little over halfway through that project. And I'd like to hear your thoughts about what we can do to wrap that project up and what you see your role in City Council as we complete that project. What would you, how do you see us proceeding?
How much time do I have?
No, my turn.
I got the watch out. We've got 25 minutes left in the program.
We're going to need it.
All right, okay, all right. So would you like me to start? Okay.
Yep.
So, Complete Streets, it's actually an amazing project. However, it has its complications. We listen to, the construction that has gone on, the bike path that people didn't expect to be 11 feet wide, the concern with it coming up Fort Wayne Avenue, how it narrowed the streets on 7th Street, the bump outs. I mean, I've heard everything that goes along with it. And I know that we're working with the depot owners who are now looking at the historic value, and they're looking at the 106 historical review, which would actually look at the projects itself that will take place or not take place in the depot area. I'm going to be honest with you. I was directly affected because, of course, the bike path goes right in front of my house on North 10th Street. I think that we, and I say we because at that time I was a constituent, and people are talking to me, you're my council member, well, what do you do? And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm frustrated too. What do you actually do? So we have become accustomed to it. We have adapted, and we're doing actually very well in that area. One question that I have posed to business owners and people who are on 7th Street and in the depot area is, what do you see happening? Let's say there's 3 options, because as the current council person, I would have to represent you either way. If the 106 historical review goes through and they say, hey, guess what? No bike path. Everybody gonna be happy? Okay. What if they say, I'm really sorry. This has already started. It's happening. We're going forward. Is everybody gonna be happy? What if they say, you two entities need to come together, sit down, have a conversation, and come up with a solution, and talk to us in 6 months? Okay. What do you see? And I have challenged several business owners. I'm like, talk to me, email me, let me know, because honestly, there can be different scenarios. And right now, in my position as the current counselor for District 2, it is my job to listen to what everybody's saying and relay it. And no matter what the outcome is, then I'm that person that then is there to support whatever the outcome may be. So I'm not sure that really answers your question, but I didn't have a lot of time, so.
You're wiggling over there, okay?
I'm going to be completely honest. The bike path is what spurred me to start running for city council. I work on 10th Street at First Christian Church. We were directly affected. I like to say that the bike path was a good idea that was executed not so well. My husband has ridden a bike for years.
Nobody rides a bike in town.
Well, he didn't ride a bike in town, actually. It was his main source of transport for a couple years, and he said, I can't ride my bike on the bricks. So, just due to I think it's tire pressure. I think if we're going to move forward with the bike path, we have to be very intentional about making sure it doesn't impact businesses. Just the other day, there was a truck driver trying to deliver to Culligan, and he took out a street sign. He got lost. He got stuck in an alley. I mean, it's horrible on just the people that are trying to get their goods delivered it makes it very hard for them. I've heard people say that their customers are having trouble even coming in because there's no parking. Me and Kelly were just at a meeting where that was brought up.
Yeah,
That was a very impassioned meeting.
it was. It was.
I just think if we're going to move forward, we have to make sure that we don't negatively impact the businesses, because that's what I've heard a lot, is that we have negatively impacted the businesses. Just Phillips Drugs is an example with their flooding in the basement. That's a negative impact. So we just have to be very careful about how we do it and go forward.
I would agree. We need to not negatively impact our existing businesses and our residents. But to be honest, I can't believe we're still bickering and arguing about the bike paths. I think they're going to be a good thing. I hearken back to Elstro Park and the criticism of that, and that has become a downtown jewel. I think we need to look forward. We need to resolve the issues that we've created with this construction. Some of the complaints about complete streets is construction fatigue. I was sick of it. I was avoiding downtown as much as I could, but I know once that work is done, it's going to be a good thing. Now, there are problems that we've created with this construction, which we have to deal with now, including Phillips Drugs. I think there's one or two other places that, I know there was a place on 10th Street that had sandbags in front of the business, which I thought was interesting. But, and we have to deal with those problems, but we do have to look forward. I think it's going to be a good thing for our community to have a drivable, bikeable, and walkable community. I think in the long term, that's what we want. That's what I think our citizens want, and hopefully that will be able to help us draw in more people in this community, including more businesses. So I think we forge ahead and we learn from this. We also learn that our residents and our business owners need to be a part of these plans and a part of the discussion. We have to make sure that they understand what we are moving ahead with, and that will be our goal in the future as council people.
Yeah, I was there in the beginning, and I remember seeing the plans that Tony Foster drew, and I remember that part of the purpose to that was to connect the success, the legitimate success of the Depot District to the downtown, and they were really hoping to have it overflow. I also did some research and know that this is a mandate in federal money that's coming down to help reduce the dependency of automobiles and provide alternative modes of transportation, especially since a lot of our younger people are foregoing automobiles and the cost of insurance and maintenance and choosing to live downtown in districts. I thought the path itself was a wonderful idea. I was all for it. I also liked the idea of connecting the commerce. I had been in a square down in Fort Wayne, and then I know that Dave ran on that platform of the loop, so it shouldn't have come to anybody's surprise that the loop was coming. I think where we failed, and like Bill said, it was a huge learning experience, and where we need to move on is that it was executed poorly. It was overdone in some of the areas. It was wider than it needed to be. It was dumped on people without them knowing what was coming. The people that lived on North 10th and North 11th, I had asked, what are you going to do about the parking? You're going to lose half your parking, especially Howard Place. There were so many owner-occupieds and so many cars that they were already coming from North 10th all the way to North 11th. And they were like, what? Nobody even realized they were going to lose their parking. If you're going to come into somebody's area and home and make big changes that are going to impact their daily life, you really do have to include them in the discussion. But now on the other hand, I was reading some statistics the other day. Wayne County, I think, is 5th in Indiana for drug use and opioids and overdoses. And Richmond, Indiana, I believe, is 5th in cities. I could be a little off there, but that's kind of the gist of it. And I said that to someone. I said, wow, I didn't realize that we were 5th, in this dilemma. And they said, and you guys are wasting money on bike paths? And I thought, ooh, the human part of that. I had not heard of it that way. I had not thought of it that way. But that was impactful. That woke me up a little bit.
You're watching the In Focus Candidate Forum on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We're down to about 18 minutes, so 90 minutes it's come and gone. So we're going to try to get through a couple of things real quick, but we're going to start with a 2-minute clip that if you were at the opening budget session, you heard Vicki Robinson say this to council, and we're going to put it out there just in case. So Brian, if you can roll that for me.
I have been trying to look toward the future for quite a few years. And though this is a nice looking building on the outside, it is deteriorating. I'm sure it's past its life expectancy and it's hard to maintain. And also the process of a new building takes a while as well. So I am here to say to you counselors to start thinking about the process of a new building. And I say that the Elder Bierman building, I don't know about who owns it or anything like that, but to me, when it came up for sale, it is a good place that is still located downtown, close to the county, to the jail. It could be renovated and relocate employees, tear this down, and you can keep it, no building. You could move the employees back, or you could keep most of the employees there and put fire and police administration in this building. But it's not even a sufficient building for how we do work nowadays.
The conversation really was, that clip was about the city building in particular.
Sure.
The age, the fact that it's not modular. I had been a fly on the wall. That wasn't the first time I had heard that discussion.
Right.
But the question in general is, as a potential council person, one of the things fiscally you're going to be looking at is the fact that Richmond, the city, owns various buildings, sites, cars, things of that nature. And sometimes the decision to put money into things like that building is a very tough call. How do you think about the structures that the city owns, the age at which they are getting as the years go on, and being able to talk to the residents about needing to make those big changes? To replace the city building, Fire Station 1, any of that is going to cost a fair amount of money. How do you have that discussion, and what moves you to begin that thought? We're going to start with you, go around real quick, and we're going to keep this to a minute and a half.
Sure. I'm aware that the county council did an inventory on their buildings about 4 years or so ago, and I know that city council had the discussion and had asked for the city to do an inventory, and that is kind of in the works right now, that they want to get a consultant to look at the inventory of the buildings, find out the estimates of what they would cost and what they would be. It's something that has to be done. Buildings don't last forever. We have to be innovative. Now, our city building, though, is one really nice piece of architecture, so I would hope that anything that we do, we're not tearing things down. It represents a certain era. These eras of architecture, you know, I'm on the HPC, and I'm very much for preservation because of the stories of preservation, because of the stories of how we move along. When those things fail, we lose a lot of the story. So I'm about the story, not I'm not hugging the building because it's concrete. But we need to show the stories of progress. How am I going to approach citizens about that? It's going to be really tough. But I have buildings, I have to do maintenance on them. Come on, you guys. Don't think I'm getting rich off of this rent. I have to put a new roof on, right? It's part of maintenance, so we have to have a maintenance schedule and find out what we have to deal with.
Actually, the conversations have already started.
Yeah.
You know, talking about what it would cost, what we would need to do, even tossing around the ideas, like Vicki said, of going into different buildings. It would be tough. How do I feel about that? I think that it is a process that is going to be necessary. I think that finding the funds to make that happen is always going to be a challenge. It's always going to be a challenge. But I think that it's a necessary process to start looking at these types of things. And like I said, we actually have already begun talking about some of the challenges that are in Fire Station 1, the challenges that are at the city building. We have already started the discussion on those challenges, so yeah.
I would definitely want to see a breakdown of what it would cost to improve the Elder Bierman building to where it would need to be to move people into that building, and what it would cost to improve the current buildings we're in, to increase our maintenance at those buildings. Our budget is really tight already. We're using 43.4% of our cash reserves to fund the current budget, and that was before AFSCME negotiations were done. So it could be even more than that. So we're really tight, and I want everybody to have a perfect workspace. I also want us to live within our means, and if we can maintain a building and make it workable and livable cheaper than we could move everybody to a new building, I think that's something we need to look at. But without having the hard numbers, it's hard to give an opinion. I deal with this a lot. I work at First Christian Church. Our church building was built in 1929, and I hear all the time, we should just knock it down and build a new one. And I'm like, you guys understand that's a whole mortgage. It's something I deal with constantly, even at my regular job.
I think it has to be done. I think we have to we have to do a study of our buildings, and we have to know their life and life expectancy and the cost of maintenance versus tearing down and building anew. I applaud Vicki Robinson for bringing this up, and actually I was shocked. I was sitting in that meeting, and I think the city building is, what, 50 years old? I mean, it happened after the explosion. So, you know, you go to Europe and there's 400-year-old buildings, but I guess it wasn't built quite that way. But with council people, as responsible stewards of the public money, of tax money, we have to look at that. We have to look ahead and see. We have to build a schedule for maintenance, repair, replacement. That's got to be part of our job. Of course, the budget is tight, and we're trying to make it as lean as possible. But we have to look ahead. We always have to be part of that discussion going forward.
Right. We're under 10 minutes.
Okay. One of the tools that we have available to us, both as a city and even as a county, is to create funding for economic development and or tourism, is the implementation of a 1% tax on prepared food and beverages. And so what I'd like to find out is a little bit about what your thoughts are about how we could productively make use of such a tax if it were implemented in our city or county. This could generate as much as $1 million a year in additional revenue that would be paid substantially or significantly by people from outside the community who travel here, visit, and move on, or come here to work but not live, in addition to the people who live here and make use of restaurants and other places that serve prepared foods and beverages. I should point out that nearly every other county along I-70 has established such a tax. So if the money were available, what do you see as the highest and best use of it for economic development or tourism, broadly defined, in our community? What could make a difference in your district or in the community at large?
I don't know where to go, so let's start with you.
Okay. It's something in my career as a journalist. I listened to the discussion at the county level when this was first brought up. The county declined to do anything with a food and beverage tax. I know there are very positive possibilities with that. As a council person, I would have to understand what the money would be used for, what it could and would be used for. I mean, is it infrastructure? Would there be programs that might help existing businesses or businesses that we might be trying to attract? I'm not sure exactly what the money could be used for, so I'd have to listen to that discussion. I would want to be a part of that discussion. And if the citizens wanted a food and beverage tax, then I would support it. I know the mayor has talked a lot about it, and so I'm certainly aware of the previous discussion on this.
Without seeing a plan, it's hard to say exactly. I know it can only be used for tourism or the economic development. We were just in Fort Wayne, and I have to say that they have worked incredibly hard on making their downtown the center and the soul of their city. I would love to see something like that. They have a baseball field downtown. We obviously can't put a baseball field downtown. They have a convention center downtown, and everything builds off of that. I think within 6 blocks, they have a river walk. They have 20 restaurants. I'd love to see something like that built, but without seeing a plan or knowing how the checks and balances are going to work, it's hard to say.
I actually have thought a lot about the food and beverage tax, and I have talked to servers who actually work in restaurants and how would it impact them if we were doing, as far as tips and things like that, because they don't make a lot of money anyway as a server. And then I look at the other side, which is the majority of the food and beverage tax would be coming in from people who are coming off the highway, coming in from out of town, things like that. And, no one ever wants to hear there's going to be a tax or your taxes are going up. But when you look at the food and beverage tax, I think that it would be beneficial to know, yes, if it's implemented, how much, realistically, how much could we benefit from it, and what would that be used for? And I think those are the two most important things that we need to know, or at least need to look at before moving forward with that process.
I have a friend on the tourism board, and I've heard a lot about the food and beverage tax, and I know that people had talked about our low amounts of revenue, and they went to the, it was brought up at the state level, what are we going to do about our failing revenue? And the state said, well, we've given you this tool to get more revenue, so why don't you use it? The Republicans traditionally have supported a use tax. You buy this, you pay tax. People who don't buy it don't pay the tax. I think it's kind of a fair system. And that this is not a popular opinion among Republicans and among my peers. But in order for it to happen, because we know what happens to a lot of things that bring in a lot of money, lottery, for example, we wonder, did it really go to our schools? Is it really going to our roads? And I've been assured that the tourism set up a board, but I think we need some very specific guidelines. Like Samantha, I would like to see it go in a tourism area downtown, if that were to come about. Being a small business owner, wedding travel, more than 50% of my people come from out of town. They love our historic buildings. I send them down to the Depot District, you give them the map, and they say, well, it's just beautiful. So I think we should preserve it. I think it's all worth preserving, especially certain features like the Reed Memorial Presbyterian Church, which I know Ray has a little bit of an interest in. That is a national treasure. It's a national treasure. We should, as a city, be able to save that in one way or another, whether it's the tourism dollars or to redevelopment funds, since it's in that TIF district. These things, even though some of our buildings have life expectancies of so long, these historic buildings have longer life expectancies. And new construction, my background is in property and casualty insurance. Funny, I had a building burned down, huh? Mm-hmm. Anyway, new construction doesn't have that kind of lifespan. I don't care 20, 30 years, right? Just like transportation has just, and television and communication, it compounds the speed with which things change and go out of style. It's the same thing with buildings. And who said Europe has 400-year-old buildings they're still using? Isn't that fantastic?
Terrific. We need to thank you all for being here. Ray, first, thank you for being here and representing the Wayne County Area Chamber of Commerce. Appreciate it greatly. Bill Engel, Samantha Bryant, they are on the ballot for District 3. Kelly Cruz Nicholson, Ardeen Scheffler on the ballot for District 2, Richmond Common Council. Remember, you still only have a couple of days left to get registered to vote, so you can do that. Registration ends Monday, October 7th. Go online, indianavoters.com, check your status, find out voting locations, and if you are not registered, you can register there. In-person absentee voting begins on October 8th. The voter registration office, 301 East Main Street, will continue to tell you about the dates that you can do that. Those are also will be available online on our social media sites as well as on our WGTV community bulletin boards. You saw a message up that next week's In Focus Candidate Forum, which will be again 90 minutes, we will be talking with candidates for Richmond Common Council at large, and then on October 17th we'll have 90 minutes with the 3 candidates running for mayor of Richmond. A few really quick things that we want to hit. Walk a Mile in Her Shoes is coming up on October 8th. The Business Expo and Taste of Wayne County is coming up on October 22nd. City Arts is happening this weekend. The Farmers Market Great Pumpkin Festival this weekend. The 4th Street Fair is this weekend. Get out and enjoy all the things that are happening around the area. We'll be back next Thursday evening beginning at 6 p.m. for another edition of the In Focus Candidate Forum. I wish you well. Have a great weekend.